Thank you for gathering with us today on this solemn and important occasion. We will begin by saying the names of the 3 men lynched in our county, beginning with the chorus, singing a refrain. Mr. George Peck. Please say his name together with me 3 times.
Mr. George Peck. Mr. George Peck. Mr. George Peck. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name.
Mr. John Diggs Dorsey. Please say his name together with me 3 times.
Mr. John Diggs Dorsey. Mr. John Diggs Dorsey. Mr. John Diggs Dorsey. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name.
Mr. Sidney Randolph. Please say his name together with me 3 times.
Mr. Sidney Randolph. Mr. Sidney Randolph. Mr. Sidney Randolph.
Their names are called. There is no answer, but we remember.
Please join us in a moment of silence. Leading us in song is the DC Labor Chorus. Please join in for Lift Every Voice and Sing. The words are in your programs.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on our way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. Let us march on to victory. Is won, victory is won.
Good afternoon. I am Lesley Younge of the Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project, or MoCoLMP. It is good to see all of your faces today. We are grateful to each of you for being here to participate in the historical installation of a marker retelling the story of Mr. George Peck, who was lynched in Poolesville. We welcome you into this time of remembrance. The marker reminds us of the horror and injustice of lynchings in our community and beyond. That is a truth. Another truth is that today we are gathering on the unceded land of the Piscataway Native people. Knowing there are many layers of injustice present on any square of land in this county or country, we feel we must name this. Since 2019, MoCoLMP and our community partners in Poolesville have been hard at work delving into the past and having conversations about the way to move toward racial healing. This marker is one step along the journey. I'd like to introduce Reverend Alexa Frazier, my co-MC, who serves on the steering committee of MoCoLMP.
Thank you, Lesley. Our host today is the Presbyterian Church, Poolesville Presbyterian Church. Representing them, we have Pastor David Williams. We are deeply grateful that this is the second big event they have hosted for us. Pastor Dave?
Thank you, Alexa. Thank all of you for gathering here. The task of our little church in this space really is nothing more than to serve as a green and gracious space for remembrance. It's so vital for our history and for our understanding of where we come from as a people to acknowledge the darkness of our past. Because until we root out those broken places, nothing can come of our future. So we are blessed to just have this opportunity to host all of you, to welcome you into this, our sacred space, as we remember today George Peck and his death, and say that here this will not happen again, and mark this place so that we won't forget. Again, it is an honor for our little community, our little church, to welcome you all here. And we are blessed together by this challenging and important time. Thank you.
We would now like to welcome Ed Reed. He is Vice President of the Poolesville Town Commission, which is the governance body of this location. Mr. Reed is the first African American to be elected to the commission.
All right, on behalf of the Poolesville Town Commissioners, staff, and numerous volunteers, welcome to Poolesville. Thank you, Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project, for your leadership in this endeavor. Today is an important day, not just for our local community, but for our extended community as well. Lynching African Americans is a horrible part of American history that must never be forgotten or played down. We must own our part of history where George Peck was the first documented lynching in Montgomery County right here in Poolesville by an angry mob who decided to be the judge, jury, and executioner of George Peck, who was supposed to be transported to Rockville for a trial. It is my understanding that this mob never was held accountable for their actions. Now, I thank God we've come a long way since that time. Poolesville is a great place to live and visit. Like anywhere else, we can do better. Now, I've heard some people ask, why put up this historical marker? I say the historical marker plays an important role to remind us not only of the injustice that occurred, but it also underscores the importance of using the tools of education, communication, and democracy to continuously strengthen all communities as safe places to live regardless of one's race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. As a community, we have a collective responsibility to work together to uphold and protect our democracy. With that responsibility comes the opportunity for all of us to contribute in our own ways to building healthy, strong communities throughout the nation. I'm honored and excited to serve along the multitude of community members who make Poolesville and the surrounding areas a great place to live and visit. So today, let us remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Together, we're continuing the important work of making our communities better for future generations. May God bless you and use you to be a blessing to others. Once again, welcome to Poolesville.
Now we would like to invite Noah Agboyabar to read Justice by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Noah has been a dedicated MoCoLMP volunteer since 2019 when he participated in our soil collection here. He is now a student at Montgomery College.
Justice by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Enthroned upon the mighty truth, within the confines of the laws, true justice seeth not the man, but only hears his cause. Unconscious of his creed or race, she cannot see, but only weighs. For justice with unbandaged eyes would be oppression in disguise.
It is by remembering that we begin the process of working together towards reconciliation. To share the story of the lynching of Mr. Peck, we welcome Faye Ghana, graduate of Poolesville High School and now a student at Cornell University, who traveled here specifically to be with us today. Faye?
Today, we gather in remembrance of George Peck, a 22-year-old African-American man murdered in Poolesville in an act of racial violence and intimidation that would soon become the calling card of the post-Reconstruction era. Mr. Peck was born in 1858 and enslaved in Montgomery County. As a young man, he worked as a farm laborer, first in Poolesville and later in nearby Bealsville. It was there on the morning of January 10, 1880, that Peck was accused of a crime, the alleged assault on a white girl with whom he was working with on a local farm. He was detained and later transported to Poolesville by the sheriff, awaiting a time where he could be safely removed to the county jail in Rockville. But a trial before his jury of peers was not in the cards for Mr. Peck, who later that evening was abducted from the sheriff by a mob, no fewer than 30 men, mostly infuriated residents of Bealsville, according to printed accounts. Wrestled from his place of retreat, with a rope fixed tight around his neck, Peck was dragged violently through the streets and over a fence to a makeshift gallows. The outstretched arm of a locust tree in a field across from the Presbyterian Church was chosen as the spot to pass final sentence upon Mr. Peck. There in night shadows, without judge or justice, he was hoisted from the ground to his death by hands of, quote, parties unknown, end quote. There he remained until late the following morning, when he was finally cut down as local parishioners were arriving for Sunday services. Today we convene as a united community to take note of this solemn event by dedicating this marker near the place of George Peck's death. We commit ourselves to racial unity, social justice, and reconciliation. Thank you.
Now we welcome up Pastor Chuck Copeland of Hosanna Community Church and a longtime MoCoLMP member. We are so pleased that this is our second ceremony in Poolesville where Pastor Chuck has spoken. Pastor Chuck.
I'm so grateful to be here today. I would like to say that it's an honor. It's an honor for me to be here today. I've been living up here for 30 years, but I didn't grow up here. For several generations, starting probably with my grandfather's generation, my family did their level best to get away from here. And there was a reason for that. Today's gathering marks the culmination of many hours of preparation, presentations. And I got here a little bit of worry along the way, but for real, we had a lot of worry along the way. But here we are. Can we get a hand for all of the work that the people have done to get us to this place? This is historic. This is the first marker that has been placed for someone who have been lynched in Montgomery County. It's right there. This is a day that many in Poolesville thought would never come. I'm reminded of the first meeting that we had about this at the old town hall. There were some who believed that this would put a bad mark on this town, as if this was the only one in Maryland who subjugated African Americans. After 1877, people began lynchings. And Maryland has its own special brand of injustice as it relates to race. See, Maryland is the South, whether you know it or not. Maryland was an occupied Confederate state. Yet many people are still surprised to hear of these atrocities. There's a lot of Confederate soldiers laying in these cemeteries around here. Some of them are related to me. You do the math. At the first meeting we had, people were worried. And I remember I had a conversation. Because like even here in Maryland, it gets away with calling their plantations farms. They like to call them farms. Even the professors like to call them farms. And on Friday, I was on a phone call and I corrected the professor. And I told her they weren't farms. Because if it's somewhere where the laborers are free labor and they working and ain't getting paid, that's a plantation. There were plantations in Maryland. And at that first meeting we had, I remember vividly a conversation that I had with Miss Gwen Reese, God rest her soul, the co-founder of the Sugarland Ethno-History Project. And I told her, I said, Miss Gwen, I told her that evening, I wasn't sure how many friends I would have left in Poolesville after this. And she got a good laugh out of that. And later, before she passed away, she told me, she said, Chucky, it's your job to speak for them. And that's why I'm standing here today. And I don't care about nobody up here in the Ag Reserve clutching their pearls. Because what happened here is the truth. And it's time out for us trying to look the other way. We're going to tell this story. And I'm going to tell y'all, my ancestors that were here, I never heard about no George Peck. I never heard about anybody being lynched up here. And it wasn't because the African Americans and the white people didn't know about it. It was because the African Americans were terrorized and they were afraid. And they didn't want to pass that trauma on to their children. Here we are. So for the rest of my life, I will speak for my ancestors. I will speak to those cowards who lynched George Washington Peck. I know that this wasn't the first person that was lynched up here. See, I live on property that has been in my family since 1877, when the protections went off of black people. Because see, when we were enslaved, we weren't being lynched because we were worth something. See, if you was a problem on the plantation, they would sell you south. They had to get something out of it. They wasn't going to kill you. Let me get back to my notes. I ain't got but 5 minutes. They knew what they were doing. They had done it before. It just had never been documented. The 3 that we're talking about are just the 3 that have been documented. I want y'all to hold on to that. And let me tell you something. One man was hung right there in Rockville on the 4th of July. It was a party. Hold on to that, because that happened in Montgomery County. People, man, I've had people walk up to me, I didn't know that Maryland had plantations. What? The 2 most famous slaves in history is Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. Where are they from? I'll wait. The dude that said that we were 3/5 of a human being is laying right up there in the middle of Frederick beside his mama, Chief Justice Roger Taney. They just took his statue down from in front of that state house down there in Annapolis when George Peck was killed. George Floyd, another George, was killed on television. It shouldn't take incidents like this for us to understand this situation of injustice in the United States of America. Those people that lynched George Washington Peck wanted to send a message to the community. So those white men from this ag reserve tortured and hung George. And they left him hanging in a tree in the middle of town, and they were not ashamed. Their ancestors that are still around, they're ashamed. They don't want us to talk about it. Get over it. That incident represented the ideology that still exists in more hidden forms today. White supremacy. I'm going to call it what it is, because my ancestors couldn't call it out. It was okay to leave George Peck hanging over there for people to see, because the message to the African American community up here was clear. Overstep your bounds and you be in a tree too. My mother's grandfather was a young man living in Dickerson when that man was hung. He was 18 years old. He was a few years younger than George. I often wonder what the conversations were like around the family dinner table that night. See, I live on the property that they lived on in 1877, 1880, when he was hung. And I think of many a day, every household, every African-American household up here was scared out of their wits. I'm sure that my great-granddaddy, Otho Thompson, and his brother Charles, who was the same age as George, were scared out of their wits. Imagine the terror from the families, because they put all of the African Americans, they pushed them out of Poolesville. That's why when you see all our little places in Sugar Land and Martinsburg and Mount Ephraim and Jerusalem, it's outside of town. So we came in town to do our business, and we was right back out of town. Imagine being an African American after you heard about that man hanging in that tree, left there on Sunday morning. These fair folks came here and was like, oh boy. It sent a message. And see, I'm a descendant, man, of all of these folks from up here. On both sides of my family. I tell people all the time, I got DNA in the black and white cemeteries up here. Yeah, and I went to find some of them. Here's what I want you guys to understand. This terror lynching happened for a reason. And it happened to continue to keep people in their place. Think about what people told their children. Black and white. You think them people in this Presbyterian church wasn't walking in there without their kids that morning? The kids saw it too. It's an African-American church right down the street there. And they said them folks came up here and cut that man down. And word is he's buried back there. I'm going to let y'all know something, okay? If that man did what them people wrote down in that story, them people from Elijah United Methodist Church at the time, Colored Methodist Episcopal, would not have come over here and took that man and put him behind their church, because that would have put them in harm's way. So I say all that to say there ain't nowhere you can go in Berlin without seeing a house with a marker showing you where the Jewish family was ripped out and taken to a concentration camp. You can't go nowhere without seeing a marker by the houses. Why? Because they didn't want to repeat it and they didn't want to forget it. They acknowledged it. The United States of America takes Confederates and put them up on a pedestal. It's time out for that. It's time out for that. What those people were willing to stand up, okay, and literally lose their life for, take up arms and lose their life to keep my ancestors enslaved. That's what the Confederacy represents to me. So listen, we got a long way to go. But I've had 3 children graduate from that high school over there. I worked in that high school over there. I'm a pastor in this town. And guess what? It's more white people in my church than brown people. Right here in Poolesville. Because it's about love and coming together. We ain't trying to make nobody feel bad. But listen, we want you to acknowledge our trauma. Don't act like it didn't happen. You need to know this black man with this big bald head is telling you. Don't act like it didn't happen. Just because you act like it didn't happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to sit down because I know I'm over my time. But what I want to say is this. The author, Toni Morrison, calls the power of the white media and how they influence what people do and how they write and how they communicate. She calls it the white gaze. Like if you look in the paper and you read it and you trust the person that read it, that makes it true. Okay? So these stories that were placed in the paper, how these accounts that were told were written by some of the people that was responsible for what happened to the young man. So we don't know the truth. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but we don't know the truth. And whatever he did, his rights were not honored. So this day is an amazing day. I'm so happy and grateful to be here and stand in front of you. And what I want you guys to understand is, listen, I want to go back to what the question that these people were asking, that what they said to the kids, right? Now, I'm sure the African-American parents kind of didn't even want to address it. They probably act like it didn't happen. Didn't want to talk about it. But I bet you, just to protect the race, a lot of them white parents said, you know, he probably deserved it. And guess what? A few years back, when we watched that police officer kneel on that man's neck, calling for his mama until he died, there's a whole lot of people in this country that said he probably deserved it. It's the same ideology. And that's why we got to tell the truth. And that's why we can't let this go by. Remembering is resistance. I'm not trying to be violent, but I'm speaking for my ancestors. I'm not trying to be angry, but I am speaking for my ancestors because they walked through this place for over 200 and something years with no rights. Miss Tina sitting right there said the police officer told her, you better get out of here. You better leave here before it gets dark. The cop told her that when she was a little girl. Okay? Let me tell y'all something. Slavery wasn't that long ago. These people sitting here, she went to school with my mom and daddy. My mother's birthday is today. She turned 84 years old today. Reverend Glenn right there went to school with my daddy. These people, listen, they can tell you stories. I'm just repeating what I heard. But I'm going to tell you something. Montgomery County should be commended. Poolesville, the town of Poolesville, should be commended. Y'all hear me? I love my town. All right? I love my town. God planted my feet here. I've been here for 30 years. I hated Poolesville growing up. I grew in Rockville. I grew up in Rockville. I didn't want to come up here for anything. And I never thought I would live here. But I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to bring reconciliation, taking that which is broken and putting it back together again. That's my job as a pastor. That's my job. And I want to do that with this community. Because whether y'all know it or not, until we deal with the blood, the sweat, and the tears that's in the ground up here, we're not going to get the healing and reconciliation that we're looking for. So my prayer is that we will just begin to continue to work together to illuminate this history. I told Jim Brown and them, I said, Poolesville hangs his hat on history. You know, they can tell me how many nose hairs John Poole got, but don't nobody talk about the enslaved Africans that he owned. They had names. They on this ledger over there somewhere, but we don't know nothing about them. It's time out for that. We were here, and guess what, y'all? I'm going to speak for them. May God bless y'all. In the name of Jesus. God bless the soul of George Peck.
Thank you, Pastor Chuck. We now wish to recognize the public officials and special guests who are with us today. Please stand or raise your name when I call your group, and continue with your hand raised or your standing if you're able. Representatives of the historical Black communities in Upper Montgomery County. Poolesville Town Commissioner. Now I'm going to call the Montgomery County Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation. Jim Stowe, Director of the County Office of Human Rights, and former City Council member Hans Riemer. County Executive Marc Erlich, who will be speaking in a moment. Montgomery County Council representatives. Maryland State legislators. And we understand that U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen has sent a representative.
We'd like to recognize one of our own, Tony Cohen, a founder of MoCoLMP and president of the Menaire Foundation and Button Farm. We wouldn't be where we are without Tony's vision and leadership. Thank you, Tony. The chorus will now sing There's Honey in the Rock. Please join them in singing the chorus.
Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. Say it again. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. In every way that I can. Feed everyone today. Open my heart and lend a hand. Feed everyone today. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. Pray for peace. Pray for peace, the whole world. Feed everyone. Feed everyone today. Pray for the end of hurtful pride. Feed everyone today. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. One of these nights, round 12 o'clock. Feed everyone. Feed everyone today. This whole world done a real and wrong. Feed everyone today. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. Freedom is the song we sing. Feed everyone today. We shall make the mountains. We shall make the mountains ring. Feed everyone. Feed everyone today. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today. Freedom is the song we sing. Freedom is the song we sing. Feed everyone today. We shall make the mountains ring. We shall make the mountains ring. Feed everyone today. Well, there's honey in the rock for all God's children. Honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock for all God's children. Feed everyone today.
I'd now like to introduce Will Schwartz, president of the MoCoLMP's statewide coalition. the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. We are deeply grateful to them and to him for giving us major financial support for the marker.
Oh, one thing that the whole COVID experience really gave me was an appreciation for how important it is to be together. I'm so moved to be here, gathered under the same sun that shone on the man we're here to honor. It's powerful to be in this sacred place, and I thank you all for coming out. Years ago, when I was in college, and that was a long time ago, I took a course in classical Greek, 1 year, and a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. I admit that. But one of the things that I learned, that I recall from that experience, was that the Greeks, for who we extol and we praise them for their philosophy and the art, their sense of justice and beauty, they did not have a word for truth. They did not have a word for truth. The Greeks, of all people, right? And the word that they used was alephe, which literally means not forgotten. And I think that has special meaning for us here today, and always. I mean, it's not only for the wisdom that it imparts, but it's a note of guidance, I think, for us all. We are here because the history of racial terror in Maryland and in the rest of the country has been dismissed and denied for so long, for generations. And so we're here to remember. We're here to tell the truth. We're here to tell the truth about George Peck, to make sure that he is not forgotten. Brian Stevenson, who we all know, who was the director of EJI, he would talk about how truth and reconciliation are sequential, which is to say we have to embrace the truth, confront it, and embrace it before reconciliation is even possible. And I like to think that the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project is kind of like on the truth part of that equation. 90 years ago, this week actually, the last known lynching in Maryland happened in Princess Anne, 90 years. And yet there are still thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Marylanders alive today who were alive on that day. So it's not ancient history, and we can't allow ourselves the luxury of thinking so. And then 5 years ago this week, we, the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, we held our first conference in Baltimore, and it was an epiphany. It really, I think, galvanized attention not only to this history, but it also really spurred a lot of interest all over the state. And Tony was there, Tony Cohen, who was there, and then immediately after that first conference, we started getting calls from all over the state from people who were interested in creating coalitions in their own counties. And I was Montgomery County. The meeting was that December. It was just a couple of months after the conference. And I just want to point out that 5 years ago, there were no coalitions in the state. And today there are coalitions in 14 of the 17 counties where we know lynchings occurred. So change is insidious, but change happens. And so what we try to do is we support the coalitions in a number of ways, and we offer fiscal sponsorship. It allows the coalitions to accept donations that are tax deductible, and we help with community remembrance projects and things like that. And so when MoCoLMP decided it wanted to move forward on this marker project, we created a special fund to cover the cost of the fabrication and the installation, and we set a goal. And I'm proud to say that the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, donated half of the amount of the fund in order to make this day possible. And so we're proud to have done that. We're thrilled to have done that. Sherilyn Eiffel talks about projects of reconciliation, right? And she says that projects of reconciliation require of individuals and communities the willingness to confront difficult truths and take responsibility for injustice. the willingness. It's a deliberate choice. It's not picking up the phone, it's not changing the channel. It's something we do, we decide to do, it's important, and we do it. And that is what's happening here today, right? This is a project of reconciliation. And so I want to congratulate MoCoLMP and all the volunteers who worked so incredibly hard to make this day possible, and I know how difficult it is, and for bringing the community together for a just and worthy cause, and we're honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
We are pleased now to introduce Sumita Rajpurohit from the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. EJI, led by Brian Stevenson, has inspired community remembrance efforts of racial terror lynchings throughout the nation.
As you heard, my name is Sumita Rajpurohit, and I'm a project manager with EJI. I'd like to share a few words on behalf of our team in Montgomery, Alabama. EJI was founded over 30 years ago in 1989 by our executive director, Mr. Brian Stevenson, in response to a crisis on Alabama's death row. At the time, 1/4 of all executions in the country were happening in Alabama. But those condemned to die lacked even the most basic representation. In the decades since, EJI has continued its mission to represent people on death row, and we've been able to expand our work to provide assistance for children condemned to die in prison, people facing cruel and inhumane treatment in Alabama's prisons, and many others who've been unfairly convicted and sentenced. Yet, as we've continued our work challenging injustice inside the courtroom, we've also come to appreciate the need for change outside those walls as well. Change in our narratives around the history of racial violence in our country, and changes in the very landscape that surrounds us. We've not yet adequately acknowledged the destruction done by the genocide of millions of indigenous people, by the enslavement of generations of kidnapped Africans and their descendants, by the culture that tolerated over a century of racial terror lynchings, and by the vehemence with which so many resisted the tide of justice and clung to segregation. For too long, we've been silent about our history of racial violence. Racial violence and terror. That silence has made generations culpable in failing to treat an open wound that still bleeds, still stings, and still causes suffering. When George Peck was seized from the custody of law enforcement officers who failed to protect him from the white mob chanting, "Lynch him, lynch him," he was burdened by presumptions of guilt and dangerousness that still infect our society today. Mr. Peck was not permitted to defend himself from the false allegations, and his killing was meant to further terrorize the entire Black community. Over 6 million Black men, women, and children fled racial terror lynchings during this era, which forever changed the landscape of America. Despite public acknowledgement that the mob members were easily identified in the community, no one was ever held accountable for their role in his lynching. But today, with this marker, we can honor Mr. Peck by acknowledging the truth of this painful history and take a step towards healing these wounds. When EJI began working with coalitions around the country to memorialize victims of racial terrorism, it was our hope to help bring about exactly what you see here today, and to help begin the process of truth and reconciliation, of truth and repair. All of us at EJI are so grateful to the community here in Montgomery County, and we look forward to continuing this meaningful work. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Derek Tabor, who will speak on behalf of the leadership of MoCoLMP.
Greetings. So here we are today, again for the purpose, sorry I got this wrong, for the purpose of remembering Mr. George Peck. If you assisted in planning this activity, I'd like you to stand. Or implementing this, please stand. Come on, don't be shy. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're here today to take another step, but this step was preceded by many, many more. And the fruits of some of those steps are realized here and also across the street. So when you cross the street, you will see sitting in the middle of the field a jar. a jar of soil, and the name on that jar is George W. Peck. Not all the steps that we've taken were taken here in Poolesville. Some of you journeyed with us to collect soil in Rockville, or to attend marker installations in Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, MoCoLMP County, Allegheny County, and St. Mary's County. I highlight these counties so that you will know that MoCoLMP is not alone, and you are not alone in your efforts. So what one may ask about is, why do we collect soil? Why do we install markers? And you've heard reasons, passionate reasons, for why that's so. But I'd just like to ask you a few questions. Something that perhaps you can discuss when you mingle with each other. Will this marker initiate the beginnings of efforts to create a future free from the prejudices, discriminations, and injustices experienced by Mr. Peck, and that were spoken also by our earlier speakers? Will this marker help lay bare the injustice of the past that silenced the voices over 143 years ago and continue to silence our voices now? Will the community start to say, I want my voice heard? I want to speak out. I want to tell the story. I want to look at those long buried photos and images in my diaries and in my photo books at home. I want to read about these things in the diary that I couldn't read about before. Will we share those stories? Will this be the marker that makes you move forward to learn more about what your family really knew about these lynchings but never wanted to say? Will this marker lead to deeper and better relationships between neighbors and communities, regardless of the color? Will you take this opportunity to know somebody, maybe that person sitting right next to you? Look at them. Do you know them? Have you heard their story? Are you interested in hearing it? Then share it with them today. I don't know the answers to all of these questions. But before I leave, I want to share with you a paraphrased example of what one person, the daughter of a person who was lynched in 1947. If the death of George Peck has motivated you and others to become involved in the struggle for a better Montgomery County, a better Poolesville, a county and a city where discrimination, prejudice, racism, and silence have been replaced with verbal, with active discussion, with kindness, and with justice, then the injustice and death of Mr. George Peck and our collective efforts in 2019 and here today will not have been in vain. So remember this as we come near the close of this. Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project, and you've seen some of us stand up today. We will be with you, Poolesville, as you struggle along that journey, as you struggle to figure out what really happened here, what really was the truth. When you debate whether or not you should share something that you learned, one of those family secrets, we'll be here. We will walk with you on that journey. We will listen to your stories, and we will help you share them. Thank you.
We are pleased that Montgomery County has issued a proclamation to recognize the importance of the creation of this historic marker. County Executive, would you come up? And as he is doing so, I would like to say a special thanks to Ms. Tina Clark for working to secure this proclamation.
So a couple of words before I start the proclamation. Who here is old enough to remember the TV episode Harvest of Shame that was aired in 1960? Yeah. For those of you who don't know the Harvest of Shame, it's the history of what happened to slavery after they were forced to officially abandon slavery, but the way they found a way to keep slavery in place for another 100 years after the end of slavery. And debt peonage was a process by which people were turned into sharecroppers on the land. They, you think about the end of the Civil War, they had to live on the farmer's property. The farmer decided what you paid for rent. You woke up in the morning, you were hungry, the farmer decided what your food cost you, and then your farmer decided how much they were going to pay you, and amazingly, the pay was always less than the bill, and so families fell into debt to the farmers, never to be relieved, and it passed on from generation to generation, and it didn't start winding till then, until Edward R. Murrow did this expose in 1960. So we think a lot about what was undone with the Civil War, and the fact is a whole lot was not undone with the Civil War, and a whole lot continued after. And I'm a child who went to the University of Maryland in the 60s. It was a segregated campus. Blacks were deliberately kept off campus. The apartment owners wouldn't rent to them, and business owners would not hire black students. And so this is in my lifetime. And I used to be an elementary teacher, and I would tell this to my students, because my students think everything ended with the Civil War. And if people do not know their past, you're kind of condemned to repeat it. And if you don't understand what happened to your communities, you can ascribe a lot of other things that aren't true, such as the failure of people, that there was something wrong with the people, that they're mired in poverty, not that systems were created to keep people perpetually entrenched in poverty. And that's a big difference in how you look at people and how you come to understand yourself and how you come to understand the world. And that's part of the importance of this project here, is to create an understanding of who we were, who we are, how we got here, and what needs to be done. You cannot understand how people think if you don't understand the journey that people took to arrive at the place we are right now. And that journey is not a good journey in this country. It involves a lot of suffering and pain on one side, and it involves a lot of misinformation and deceit on the other side. And neither people have had the opportunity to truly fulfill any opportunity to build a decent bridge and relationship, because so much of what's been done has been poisoned by the atmosphere in which everybody is raised. And that is a real shame. And I think more so than ever today, we see the product of blind hate. It is not good, and America spent a lot of time wandering in that, and we still have too many people who still dwell in that dark place. We have a proclamation, and it's whereas 3 documented lynchings took place in Montgomery County: George Peck, January 10th, 1880, John Diggs, July 27th, 1880, and Sidney Randolph on July 3rd, 1896. Whereas in Maryland, as throughout the South, Jim Crow was the law of the land. Confederate veterans were venerated and elected to office. Former slaves and their children lived in segregated and often subsistent lives in small communities such as Jerusalem, Big Woods, and Sugar Land. And one of the consequences of these race relations was an increase in lynching. Even without assumptions of who got lynched, it was a pretty horrible experience, and it certainly did what the pastor said before. It terrorized whole communities. It served the purpose of forcing people to stay in line because they knew what the consequences were, and they knew that if you suffered those consequences, there would be no retribution or no repayment or no justice that would follow doing something like a lynching. Whereas the Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project was founded to tell stories, to shed light on the shameful part of history, and to bring reconciliation to our communities by documenting the history of racial terror lynchings, by advocating for public acknowledgement of these horrific acts of terror, and working to honor and dignify the lives of the victims. This group is providing long overdue memorial services for Montgomery County lynching victims. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Marc Erlich, as County Executive, hereby proclaim October 22nd, 2023 a day of remembrance and reconciliation to honor George Washington Peck. A historical marker is placed in his honor, and be it further resolved that all residents of Montgomery County are encouraged to join me in acknowledging this important historic event and work together to understand, repair, and heal the damages of the past by demonstrating a positive, responsive willingness to build a better future for all people. Let us join together, work for the day when each person knows that they are valued, respected, and equal here in Montgomery County, signed the 22nd of October, 2023. And I will get you a formal copy of this to present to you later. Thank you all very much.
As we close our ceremony, we hope all of you will join us across the street for a reception. Locals has provided a lot of food, and we hope there's be an opportunity for us to gather, to talk, to share our stories as we've been encouraged, and to get to know one another in an act of remembrance and reconciliation. At this point, if you are someone who needs a little bit more time to cross the street, if you are a representative of the historic Black communities, we would like to welcome you to head over to the reception first. We have people on hand who will point the way. At the reception, we encourage everyone to talk informally with the representatives of our historic Black communities about their deep history. They have much to share, and we have much to learn from them. For everyone else, we want to let you know about the next steps in our effort. On November 11th at 2:00 p.m. at the County Council Chambers in Rockville, there will be a dedication of 2 markers that recognize the other lynching victims in our county. You can get a flyer at the reception with more information about that event. Moving forward, MoCoLMP will be working with community partners in Poolesville to create a remembrance journey. We also hope to add a bench and other features to enhance the marker setting. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to keep up with our plans, so just please sign up at the MoCoLMP table during that reception. After the chorus leads us in the final song, again, please cross the street and join us on the patio of locals. You can view the marker, which is just to our right by the road, at your leisure. Thank you for joining us today.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Join us in singing Ella's song. Shed some light. I could just shed system. We who believe in freedom.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest, cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Struggling myself.
Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize
And teaching others.
that teaching others to stand and fight is the only way I struggle survive.
I'm a woman who speaks.
I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard.
Sometimes I can be quite difficult.
Sometimes I can be quite difficult. I'll bow to no man's
We
word.
who believe in freedom.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest, cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest, cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Thank the ancestors.